instance, Black Lives Matter are now calling not just for defunding the police and abolishing the police, but getting rid of prisons. Now, there are many people in prison who shouldn't be there. But there are some people in prison who should as hell be there for the safety and protection of society as a whole. So here you have Black Lives Matter calling for the end of prisons. And I've been writing in my books for years that what the cult wants to create is basically, I think one of their documents called it a jungle atmosphere, a jungle society, basically where there is no law, where the mob rules. Going back to 1871, there was a letter sent by a high Freemason called Albert Pike to another member of this cult, describing a series of things that were going to happen through the 20th century, because this cult agenda is projected right into the what we call the future. This is why Aldous Huxley and George Orwell were so accurate in describing current events, because this is why I've been so accurate in describing current events, because if you can access this projected agenda, then you can predict the future, because unless something comes to intervene to stop it happening, it will happen and you will appear to predict the future. What you're actually doing is saying this is what the agenda plans for humanity. One of the things that Pike said in this letter in 1871 was they were going to unleash the nihilists. And if you look at the definition of a nihilist, it's what's happening now. And they want to create chaos, fear, upheaval, especially in this period between now and 2030, when they want to transform human society. They're in the process of it. This whole pandemic hoax was massively part of it, and so's current events. They want to transform human society into an Orwellian global fascist technocratic dictatorship that would make George Orwell wince and say, my God, I underestimated it. Now, while they're doing that, they want the population looking in the other direction. They don't want them sitting back and connecting the dots. They want them constantly reacting to chaos, upheaval. And that's why we've gone seamlessly, and it seems to be like another random event. It's not. It's all part of the same progression, what I call the totalitarian tiptoe. We've gone seamlessly from the lockdown situation into the protests and the riots. So if you go back to Black Lives Matter, what the cult wants is upheaval, fear, and crime, anything that will create chaos and fear among the community. And one of the things they want is to get as many of the prisoners that should be in jail out of jail as possible and into society, so the chaos and the fear and the upheaval can manifest and grow. So here's a situation. You've got George Soros, who through his Open Society foundations has funded Black Lives Matter. And he has an agenda to empty the prisons, basically.
Why? Why does he want to do that?
For the reasons I've just described.
Chaos.
Chaos, upheaval, crime, fear, rule of the mob, might is right, defund the police while all this is going on. This is what they want.
Right. Rich people don't need the police, do they?
No, of course not. They sit behind walled houses and homes. They have their own private protection systems. I mean, we had a classic this week where a major politician in LA was calling to defund the police, the Los Angeles police, by like $150 million or something. And she was exposed as having her own, basically, private police protection unit from the same people she wanted to defund. But if I go back to Soros, so he has this agenda for basically A, getting prisoners out of prisons, violent prisoners, and B, not putting away violent people who should be put away. So he started massively funding the campaigns of the DAs, district attorneys in America, to put into those positions people he controlled, which he's successfully done in many cases, who would stop imposing the law and putting violent people away on the scale they should be. And these district attorneys have done exactly that. So Soros has this agenda. He's put so much money into doing this. Soon as the pandemic hoax, I would call it, started, Soros is calling for prisoners to be let out of prison, and thousands were, on the grounds of the coronavirus. And Soros is funding Black Lives Matter that wants to abolish prisons. I mean, hello? One of the agendas that I've been highlighting now for the best part of 30 years is that this cult wants to destroy the family, wants to destroy the family unit, so the state can bring up children from the start and have complete control of their minds. Why does a Black Lives Matter organization that claims to stand for racial justice have an agenda for this was the phrase, disrupting the Western family unit, basically, which is the same agenda as the cult? Why do 1% billionaires like Soros, 1% corporations like Cisco, 1% foundations galore fund Black Lives Matter when they could not give a shit about black people or any other apart from themselves? Why would they do that? And here's a kicker. This cult that I've been exposing all these decades, it's not just a modern phenomenon. It goes way back. It's just been increasing its power as it's more and more centralized power and gathered more and more wealth to itself, hence the symbolic 1%. But it goes way back. Now here's an irony of ironies. The same cult, families and networks that were behind slavery and the imposition on black people of slavery are the same networks, the same cult that funds Black Lives Matter. What is going on? Here's another irony of ironies. This cult, at its core, is almost entirely white. And it is funding Black Lives Matter in basically a war on white people. Get on your knees and confess your white privilege. That includes white people living in the streets of San Francisco, does it? Alongside black people. And I'll come to that in a second, what this is really about. Because it's not a race war, it's a class war. So, why would this core of white people at the core of this cult want to create a war on white people? Because this is not a division of white people in the cult and other groups and communities and colors and races within the human family. This is a war between the cult and the entirety of humanity. White, black, sky blue, bloody pink, all of us